Hey developers, this is a long video, so I'm going to give you some context at the beginning here so that you can decide if this is something that you want to take the time to watch, and if you do want to watch it, do you want to watch the whole thing? Do you want to skip around? I had this idea for an app, or I don't know if you'd call it an app, but it's ProjectNext.App. You can see it's live online right now. And what it essentially is it's a platform for learning new skills and sharing your information with developers, learning from other developers, and I'm trying to do this through weekly hackathons. Essentially, there's definitely some context around that. So I knew once I started working on this that I wanted to document the process so that along the way, as I went from idea to execution and things changed, I wanted to be able to show people, especially inexperienced or newer developers, what it's like to create an app and how it changes over time. So something that I haven't done yet, so it's not included in this video, but it's something that I intend to add in the future, is going to be to set up sponsored hackathons. So if you're interested in that, either as a developer or a potential sponsor, definitely sign up and reach out to me and let me know what you're thinking, because I've already got interest on both ends, which is great. That's not where this started off, but I think it's sort of turning into a good platform for that type of thing. So that's very exciting. I originally planned to create an app within 1 week. So I anticipated the video to be a short video, but as I worked on this, it became clear to me at least that I think this thing has a lot of potential. So it went from a 1 week project to a 1 month project. So this video is also much longer than I expected for that reason. This video really, it's pretty meta in a sense because it's showing how this website, where it's going to actually be embedded, it's showing how it was made. So if you're a developer, you're probably going to enjoy it. I go over Firebase, Firestore, Vue.js, Vuetify, Vuex, Airtable, No Code API, Node.js, JavaScript, and just general web app architecture. So if you're a developer, you're probably going to get a good understanding of what it's like to develop a web app. If you're interested in, or if you're currently using Vue.js, you'll probably get a lot out of the video. No matter who you are, you may want to watch it at 1.5 or 2x speed. I'm not the fastest presenter, in any sense. There are a few places in the video where I speed things up, or I cut a lot of things out for the sake of, speed if it wasn't completely necessary for context. And I sped the video up in a few places if, for example, I wasn't talking but I was demonstrating things. So there's one part near the end where I do sort of a deep dive into the code for about 25 minutes. So if you're interested in sort of like the basics without wanting to deep dive into the code so much, you'll know when it gets to that point. It's towards the end. I originally planned on using Airtable for creating projects. I ditched that pretty quick. I abandoned Airtable at first partially, and then as development went on, I entirely abandoned Airtable in favor of Firestore. You'll see the solution that I had at the beginning. It worked, but it wasn't very elegant. I also completely got rid of No Code API. I was using that essentially as middleware for Airtable. Something else that happened during this video was I got banned from StackShare because I was scraping from them. Yeah, so I'm still banned from StackShare, unfortunately. I built a custom scraper without any frameworks or packages, and it was a great learning experience, but now I can't use it at home anymore, so be careful scraping. I wanted sort of like the learning experience out of it, so I don't know if I did something wrong. I don't know if there's a better way to do it, but they caught on to me and blacklisted me. So I put the code up on GitHub. I wouldn't recommend using it because it will get you banned from using their site in the future. But if for the sake of like a learning experience you want to see how it worked, I didn't put it in this video, but it is up on GitHub. I wasn't actually using Vuefire. I planned on it originally. I was following the Firebase and the Firestore documentation, and Vuefire isn't included in the Firebase and Firestore documentation because it's actually created by the Vue Foundation, if I'm not mistaken. It's not created by Google and the Firebase team. So as I followed the Firebase documentation, they just sort of like worked it out of the project. In hindsight, I wish I would have been more mindful about that because it makes working with Firebase and Firestore a lot easier. I mentioned at one point that Firestore didn't grow on me, but I'd like to clarify that ahead of time because it definitely did grow on me. And now I understand why people love it. There's just a pretty steep learning curve that I was frustrated by when I said that. But I think that I broke through it, and now I'm comfortable with it and happy that I worked with it, and I'll definitely be using it again in the future. I went from being, like mildly familiar with it to being comfortable with it, and that's, something I'm absolutely thrilled about. It turned out to be a great project because even though I knew a lot of the stuff to some degree, I got comfortable with a lot of things. So, for example, Firestore, Firebase Storage, Github OAuth, and then with Vue, I've been using Vue for a long time, and I really, really love Vue. But some of these things I didn't even know were features, and some of them I just never really looked into much. So that would be like filters, directives, custom plugins, global components, and then Vuex, of course. Vuex has been demystified for me from this project. I think I'm going to make a video about it because I had such a tough time learning Vuex, and I think that the documentation does a really poor job of explaining it. There's a lot of tutorials online, but I think that they also assume that you're coming from something like Redux or some other form of Flux state management. So a lot of the tutorials are just really bad for people who don't already understand that form of state management. So with that said, I do think that Vuex is sort of needlessly complicated, but I now finally understand it, and I think I understand it really well. And I would really like to make a video to help other people to understand it because it took me a really long time to really figure it out. Vuetify. I got a much better understanding of how it works and everything under the hood so I can better customize things. I learned the grid system, and ironically, the Vuetify grid system is just flex boxes with inline controls, which is where I think everything is sort of heading that way. I'm not completely sure, don't quote me on that, but my brother was really into artists and web design a few years back, and so this is like before VS Code days. He was using Sublime Text, Laravel, jQuery, and he was really big into like CSS and design and UX stuff. He explained to me not that long ago that CSS grid was much preferable over Flexbox. But as of lately, at least to the best of my understanding, I think that the frameworks, like Bootstrap or frameworks that use material design, whatever else, I think that they're, for the most part, using Flexbox under the hood with 12 columns to make the grid. It feels like you're using CSS grid with those frameworks. You're actually using Flexbox disguised as grid. So I'm going to go ahead and get the video started here so you can see what it's all about, and I hope you enjoy the video. As a software developer, I have a recurring problem, and the solution to that problem, in my opinion, is self-evident, but it doesn't really exist yet. So that's what this video is going to be. I'm going to be exploring if I could solve this problem while at the same time creating a community of other people who are looking to accomplish the same thing. The problem that I have, and it's not so much a problem as something just isn't optimal. I think all software developers are always trying to learn new technologies because it's interesting. I think that a lot of people who code for a living also do it recreationally, and things are always changing. Technologies are always changing. So that's why every software developer, probably on Earth for the most part, has a quote-unquote side project that they're working on. I've been working on the same app for a long time now, and it's become very monotonous. And I haven't lost the passion or the drive to work on it by any means, but programming becomes less fun when you're stuck doing these administrative, maintenance types of tasks instead of actually building out this cool thing that you envision. Because at first it's a lot of fun when you're prototyping, when you're building from the ground up, but then once you actually launch and you start dealing with security and operations, things like that, it gets incredibly monotonous really quickly. I wanted to challenge myself to start creating one project every week. What I tend to do is I tend to learn maybe one new technology or look into one new technology and just try it out every week. But I want to have more of a structure for doing that. So what I decided I was going to do is I was going to create one app every single week to use up all of these domain names that I've purchased. There's a lot of them. There's almost 100. So that's where I came up with the idea of ProjectNext.App. What I'm going to do personally for myself is I'm going to pick one project or one domain name or one idea every single week. I'm going to try to learn a new technology or a new concept by building something out. The ideal goal would be that I could have something online, up and running, and hosted at a new domain by the end of each week, although I think that that's a lot to push for. But it is getting easier and easier these days with all of the tools that we have available to us to actually get a project online and hosted if it's not too incredibly complex. Not to mention tools like Airtable and Zapier. They make a lot of the back end really easy to automate. So I'm looking for other software developers who are interested in doing this with me. In a perfect world, this is how I would envision this working. At the beginning of the week, everyone involved would answer a few questions, a few very simple, short questions, such as what do you want to build, or what theme or technology do you want to work with, for example. Just maybe very vague. Maybe some people are going to have very specific ideas of what they want to build. The second question might be, what do you hope to gain from this project? For some people, maybe they just want to learn a new technology. Maybe other people are looking for the spark for a larger project. So I would imagine something like that. Every Monday, people would sort of check in and fill this out. Throughout the week, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. I don't think that it would really make sense to have people check in regularly so much as at the end of the week for everyone to hop on a Zoom call together and go over what they did the previous week. Now, the idea would be that at the end of the week you scrap it and move on to your next project. So you know you don't have to take it too seriously. And I think that really lets you be really creative about how you want to handle things or what you want to learn. I'm sure that most of us do this anyways. Now, where I think it could get interesting is if we were actually judging products. There's a lot of value in that whole gamification thing, and I've seen that recently with a few different services that I'm using. And when you have people that sort of vote on things or get together as a community and try to improve things when they're passionate about it, it's really just sort of like an amazing thing. I know that I'm not the only person that feels this way, and I just wish that the platform existed. But since it doesn't exist, I think I'm going to create it as my first project within this new ProjectNext.App that I'm trying to build. So me building this out could be the first project. I think another thing that would be really cool is that at the end of the week, if you're onto something really special, if you caught that spark and you decide that this is really just what you want to work on, that you should be able to keep going. And maybe there would be a second group of people. So then there's a lot of ways to go about it, but at a first view, a first thought, what I'm thinking is that there could be a weekly sort of contest and then a monthly sort of contest. And I mean contest in a very loose sense of the word. And some of those weekly projects could become month-long projects or longer. Maybe that could just be divided into several different groups of how long you've been working on something. I could imagine that some people will want to work on a project for a month and then scrap it and start something new. That's not uncommon either. And I imagine that these are going to be like side projects. Most people have something that they're primarily working on. And I think that if your side project becomes your main project at any point in time, it should really be classified in a different light. So this is going to be sort of the inaugural episode of this new project, and I hope to bring other people on board with me. So using this essentially as my first entry, this is what I've come up with. Project.Next.App, you're going to create a profile. It's going to include your technology interests, your languages and frameworks. I think that it would also be good to have goals in here specifically pertaining to new technologies. And then sort of like a pseudo resume, so that if someone looks at the profile, they can get an idea of sort of who you are, what types of experience you have, maybe what interests you. And then information for networking, contact information that you want to give out to other people in the same community. And then at the end of the week, it would be like a live stream, a live streamed Zoom call. What did you make? Did you accomplish your goals? What did you learn? What surprised you? Do you have the desire to build on this idea? And if so, are you looking to put together a team? Now, I think that's where it could get interesting. Maybe someone else who worked on something that same week, they weren't so happy with how their project turned out, but they're really interested by what you're building. I think that could really turn into something cool. What's cool about this idea is that you can build anything you want with no expectations and scrap it. And then only join in on the live stream if you really feel like sort of geeking out with the other community members about what you built. So that's where I'm starting. That's what I'm thinking. And where I'm going to get started is going to be with an Airtable document. And the first bit is to create a profile, which just sends you to this very basic form to fill out. Next one is going to be to fill out a weekly form. So this would be sent to you through email every week, saying something along the lines of click this link to participate. So for this one, I'm going to say project. My project is called Project Next App. For the product page, I'm going to go ahead and post in this Notion page. This is ready to submit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and update the GitHub repo once I create it, which means that when I create the platform, I'm going to need to allow this to be edited after the form's filled out, which shouldn't be a problem. But what I'm planning on using, the technologies are Vue.js, Firebase hosting, Firebase Cloud Functions, Zapier, Airtable, and No Code API, which I haven't used really yet. Now for goals, I put get more comfortable with user authentication and cloud functions, create a structure for learning new technologies, and build a community. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that. I need these tables to be linked together. So the user is going to have to pick their email address when they fill out the project. So I guess there will be a drop down, and then people will be able to opt out of it. But if the active box is checked, then it will show a list of all the participants, and then you pick which one of them you are. So I'm sure I can come up with something better, but that's going to have to work at least early on. And we're done with that. Now I'm setting up a Firebase project so I can have the hosting and the authentication and the cloud function set up here. I made a folder, so now we're going to initialize a Vue project here. And I've been on the fence here between Vue 2 and Vue 3 because I'm very comfortable with Vue 2, but I haven't gotten too deep into Vue 3. So although I was going to do Vue 2 for the sake of a faster prototype MVP experience, I'm going to go ahead and go with Vue 3 so that I can try to learn something new with this project. Here we've got some boilerplate stuff. Well, I found the most infuriating of issues here. I decided to go with Vue 3, and apparently the most important plugin that I need for the app isn't compatible with Vue 3 yet. So I tried a whole bunch of different workarounds. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. It doesn't look like they're prioritizing it. As of 15 days ago, it's still not done, and the issue's been closed. So it looks like I'm going to have to revert back to Vue 2, unfortunately. I got some pretty complicated stuff working, but if you can read this commit right here, operational but layout is trashed, that sort of explains the last 24 hours or so perfectly. So I made this exhaustive list, and I did it using the 2019 and 2020 Stack Exchange developer survey, and then I used the TOB index, I think it's called, and I put together a spreadsheet of all of these, and I got rid of any duplicates, and I categorized everything into these groups, which is automation, compiler, preprocessor or packager, database / ORM, development platform, framework library, no code or low code, programming language, runtime or environment, and then software platform. So a lot of good stuff to choose from. So if we go back to this project area here, this is where you'll select the technologies that you plan on using. If there's something that's not listed, which is, I really racked my brain for anything I could think of. I'll be shocked if people start listing things on here that aren't already included. Now, the GitHub repo, it says this is optional, and it is optional, but what I'd really like to do is I'd like to have, since I'm already connected with the GitHub API, I'd like for this to automatically pull in so you can actually, just right through your profile or something like that, actually select your project. I think that would be really cool. Project page, so if you have it hosted somewhere, like let's say you have it on Heroku, or you draft up some information about it on Notion, whatever you tend to do when you're working on a project, that's where you can link it. And then you could have some goals. There's a project length, so you could choose 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, or long term. As of right now, you have to actually select your username from the list, but I got the email addresses off of it, and then they'll submit that. So then it gets added into this projects table, which right now there's only one entry on here because it's the one that I'm actually building right now. But there is so much information on here. This took me quite, not gonna say literally all day, but almost all day just to build this database right here. There's so much logic that goes into it, starting today and ending today on a presentation day. So let's say every Monday is a presentation day. Everyone gets on a Zoom call and they go over what they did last week and what they're doing this week. And if someone has something that they started that needs to be presented today, it'll show up here. So then we can sort this by presenting by today. Obviously there's nothing in there, but there's not any real data in here. I really should fill it up with some dummy information for the time being. So we have the project submission date, we have today's date, we have the project length, and then just a whole bunch of things that sort of help to categorize it and help with some of the automation processes. I want to link the weekly projects, the technologies table and the users table, so that people can list technologies that they're already proficient in and then technologies that they want to learn, so that we can help to match people up for teams or maybe future projects or something like that. I think that would be really cool. State management with Vuex, this was something of a nightmare. So the way that this app actually works right now, the biggest thing is this login feature. So when someone logs in, we do sign in with GitHub. Once they sign in, then it's going to get the Airtable users. Then it's going to create a special URL for Airtable for the API call, and it's going to test if that person's email address is in the list of Airtable users that are active. And if they are, then it's going to get the data from Airtable and it's going to set it to Vuex for state management. Now, if it's a new user and they're not in Airtable yet, then it's going to go to add new user to Airtable. Unfortunately, the format of this data is different depending on if it's a new user or if it's an old user, or an existing user, I should say. So what it's going to do is it's going to take all of this information and then using no code API, because that was a technology that I said that I wanted to learn or work on this project. Regardless, what it's going to do is it's going to use that API and it's going to push this stuff to Airtable, and then it's going to use Axios to pull it from Airtable, and then it's going to set it to Vuex. So we'll see what that looks like in practice. I suspect that right now the old information, the old data from Vuex is probably still saved to my memory. It's cached. The reason that I said I'm going to trash this layout is because I tried to put this in there, a drawer I think it's called, and it would have been cool in theory, but look what's happening over here. And then this isn't even lined up right. I just tried to pull some Vuetify assets and to try to make something. Dennis B on Upwork, he's working on building a proper logo for this website right now. So we'll go ahead and sign in with GitHub. And there we go. So this is the profile. But again, this isn't going to work, and this is just temporary. So I'm so upset with how that turned out that I don't even want to deal with fine-tuning it and making it work. I think I just want to try something new. This feels more like Steam or... I could really see this being a nice layout, though. You know what? I'm going to give this one a go. I think I'm going to see if I can make this work, because this would be a really, really cool... yeah, let's try this out. The more I look at this, the more I'm starting to sort of become cynical about it. Last year, maybe a little bit over a year ago, a buddy of mine needed some database work done, so I was helping him out with it. He was porting his database over from one service to another service, and I was helping the team at the new service to help transition his legacy database into his new database. A very common theme with that database that he was using was that everything was hyper fragmented. So you might want to have a table for users, you might want to have a table for staff, but you also don't want for part of the address to be over here and part of the address to be over there. So for example, this database he was using, the state was in a completely separate database from the address and the city. So the address table was like address, or ID, address, city, and then state ID, and then zip code. So then you had to join the state ID link table to the address table when you wanted to get the state abbreviation, because there was a table just for state abbreviations. Anyways, what I'm getting at is that that's what this feels like to me. All of these different Vuex modules split up like this. And so the more that I look at this, I'm really thinking about this, it's like someone designed the theme around a completely fake video game platform. And realistically, to use this, I'm going to have to delete almost all of this stuff. I don't even know if using a theme is going to save me time at that point. This is so overkill for what I'm trying to do. You know what? The more I look at this, the more I realize it's just not going to work for me. So I'm going to ditch this idea. Yesterday was 1 week, and I managed to hit the deadline that I was going for. And while this is buffering or loading right here, I'm going to do this. We'll go to ProjectNext.App, because it's actually live now. So this is what it's turned into. I paid someone on Upwork for this logo right here. We've got Explore Projects and Get Started. The login is an OAuth login with GitHub. And then we just have some featured projects here on the front. You can see that the layout it's definitely screwed up. So I'm developing on a Surface Laptop 3. It has a 3:2 aspect ratio, but I have a second monitor here, which is much larger, so I'll develop on the second monitor, and then when I put something on my primary monitor here, everything's skewed, and it reminds me that I didn't take this aspect ratio into account. So I have a lot of things that I need to clean up here. It leaves a lot to be desired. There's a lot of problems, like, I'll show you this. It is responsive, but I'm using the Vuetify system, the Vuetify grid system. So you can see that on mobile, for example, it looks actually a little bit better than the full screen version, because I was only trying it on full screen on the large screen and then the mobile view. But also, when you think about what this looks like on an actual cell phone, it looks really weird that this doesn't take up the full width of it. I didn't realize that until I opened it on my phone last night. So I'm going to fix that today, as well as all the rest of the issues with the layout. So let's go ahead and log in here. Oh, also the logo here, I got this from someone on Upwork, and I think this actually looks kind of cool if if it's just cut off there. However, although it won't do it here on the phone, if you're on the phone, you could quite literally just push it over and see all this other stuff here with the blank black background behind it. So let's go ahead and log in. We can do that by going to get started. Oh wow, this looks absolutely ridiculous. I don't know how that one slipped by me, but it did. So we'll log in. Oh, okay. It's not authorized to run this operation. I see. So I didn't approve this new domain name. So again, that's something else I have to do. Some little corners like this that I cut turned out to be a bigger deal than I anticipated. This should be fixed now. Let's give it a go. I'm going to refresh this, although that shouldn't matter. All right, so now we're logged in. So let's see what we can do here. Again, we've got this carousel here with the projects. Last time I showed this, it was using Airtable for this. Now it's using Firestore exclusively. Vuex, the state management, it works pretty well with VueFire and Firestore. So yeah, I wanted to learn that, and I did learn it, and now I'm pretty happy with it. We'll go to Explore Projects, and a theme that you'll sort of notice as we go through this is that there's a lot of layout issues. I'm not a designer. I'm more of like a back-end guy, but I need to at least be able to make it nice and presentable. But you can tell that I definitely didn't make that my priority. This is an actual project that I'm working on. It's a long-term project, so right now it's saying invalid date. I'm going to have to fix that. That's something I just noticed I don't have set up correctly. But if we go look at this, we've got a screenshot that you get to provide when you create a project, as well as the technologies, and then there's going to be a comment system. There's going to be a few other things on these pages as well. So the goals here: build a SaaS model, get 10 paying agencies on a recurring monthly plan, add automation to the debt collection process. It's got the GitHub repo. Again, these are too dark to see, but I'll fix this. But this is a private repo, so you can't access it. But that's not going to be the case for a lot of things on this website. And then the product page, I just have a link to the actual landing page there. And then, again, this is just sort of placeholder stuff. What I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to probably use the API, the GitHub API, to pull in the README and display it here. Jin Yang was nice enough to sign up and test this out, so he's building hamburger, not hamburger. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. Now there's this layout issue here where the bar is extending too far down. Again, this is totally on me not being a designer and not prioritizing it. So what we can do is we can go to hackers, and we've got a list of the people who are registered, which right now is just me and Jin Yang. It's functional, it's not pretty. We can go to all projects instead of just the featured projects, although right now there's only a small handful of projects anyways. There's a sidebar here as well. I don't have the profile working yet, so yeah, I have to fix that. It says profile page will be ready in a day or two. And if we go to Next.App, man, I really have to fix that. Anticipated technologies, we can say that it's going to use JavaScript, TypeScript. I should probably do something about that too. I don't like that. I mean, you can just go down the list, but there's over 100 technologies here. Yeah, this stack doesn't make sense, but let's put a GitHub repo in here. We could have a product page, and then goals. Goal 1, goal 2, goal 3. And then we need an image URL. We'll do Dolphin because I just looked at my MySQL Workbench logo down there and I'm not feeling too creative this morning. So let's get this image right here. We'll copy the image address and we'll paste that in. Now this is going to be different. What I plan to do here is to actually use Firebase Storage and allow for an upload. But again, I was trying to get it hosted within 1 week. I had a really good conversation with someone who's really into open source software, and for a quick shout out here, the website is gray.software. We had a discussion about open source and learning to code, and what he recommended to me was, I think this is really cool, by the way. If you haven't checked it out, definitely do it, because it's it's to build community projects in an open source fashion. So I think it's just really cool. Definitely, check that out. Anyways, he thinks that we should set this to 2 weeks, and I completely agree. So the more I thought about it, while we were discussing it, it makes a lot of sense. The first week, this was 1 week I tried to build this, and I have to say it was a stressful, long week, and I wasn't super productive doing other things. So I think that 1 week to play with the idea and see how it sort of changes, and how it grows, and what your direction's going to change a little bit. So I think that leaving the option in to be able to choose 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, or long term, I think that would still be good. But I think that maybe instead of the default being 1 week, maybe the default should be 2 weeks. So that's sort of what I'm leaning towards at the moment. So let's go ahead and submit this. And then right now it just brings you back to the projects page, which I'm not super thrilled about. But again, it was just like a temporary thing. So now we have it here, and we can go ahead and click on it and see the project page. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done, but it's very close to being ready. So let's see what else I can show you here. I'm not using Zapier or Airtable anymore. So the stuff in Airtable I showed before is now taking place here instead. So this is the app that we just created in there. This is all the information. When someone logs in, if it's their first login, that they should be able to, or not that they should be able to, but rather it should send them an invitation to a Slack group. I think that would be a good place to start. So I'm going to work on all this stuff today, and then what I'll do is edit this video down, and then I'll probably put it on this website right under here, so you can sort of see the process of not under here, this is the wrong app, so you can see the process of how this was built. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but I'm feeling pretty good about it at this point. I have Firebase Cloud Functions here, which I'm probably going to leverage one way or another. I haven't done it yet. I have this set up for TypeScript at the moment, and it's going to stay that way. Project assets, the actual components. Some new stuff that I learned during this project is filters. I never knew that Vue had something called filters, so that was pretty cool. What this is really doing is it just takes a date, and it takes whatever format you give it, and it formats it the way you want it to look. I did not know that this was a feature that Vue had, so that's definitely something really cool. I learned a lot about how Vuetify actually works under the hood, so that's really cool too. I might not be good with the formatting and the design and everything, but Vuetify is definitely a very good skill to have for rapid development. So I learned, even though I've used it before, I definitely learned a lot about how it works under the hood with this project. And then Vuex. Vuex has been sort of terrifying for me because I've gotten things to work in the past, but it's always felt like so close to breaking. It might work, but it's not going to work for long. So I'm actually pretty thrilled with how this turned out, because now I can confidently say that I understand Vuex and Flux state management with we have states and then mutations, actions, and getters. It is complicated. I think that I think it's needlessly complicated, to be honest, but I'm absolutely thrilled that I sort of got to really learn how that works. I learned a bit about how to work with ES6 modules within a Vue app. So yeah, a lot of good stuff that I learned from this project, and I'm very happy about that. Not the least of which is actually Viewfire. Viewfire is really cool, and I didn't realize that it was actually made by the Vue Foundation. So I stayed away from it thinking that it was third party, but it's really not a third party unless you look at it as a third party Firebase or Firestore driver. But all in all, a very good learning experience, and that's really what I'm hoping that this can turn into. Today is the last day of the second week, so let's take a look at how it's come along. I think it's come quite a long way. We're going to go ahead and push the latest update. What am I doing here? We're going to build it. It's done building, so now it's deploying to Firebase hosting. Of course, push it to GitHub, and we're ready to go. So let's start here. I'm not a designer. I guess I can't say I don't like UI because it's becoming like a requirement, but I definitely don't like graphic design. There's a point in my life where I did really like it. I've sort of fallen off of that train. Every time I have to come up with some sort of logo, I really dread it. So you can see some of the really horrible attempts that I made. This is actually just a screenshot. But you can see here that on the old version, I literally just had text up in the top left corner for a logo, which was like this right here. And then a lot of really boring text stuff. We have these disgusting favicons, but this is actually still in use right now, so I have to do something about that. And then these, I commissioned these on Upwork, and I'm pretty happy with them. I would have preferred more of a flat design, but I think that they got the job done. This is the one I'm using at the moment. I think it's kind of cool. These, I actually thought that this might work as a banner at one point. It definitely did not. I eventually made this right here, which is the logo up in the top left corner now. And it's okay. You know, I guess it gets the job done. I tried to make this look like a fat arrow, like an arrow function. So I don't know if you can really tell or not. I don't think it really gets the point across the way that I hoped it would. But, you know, it's ProjectNext.App, and I think that the fat arrow kind of, you know, and I don't know if it signifies it, not really. So that's the design type stuff as far as like logos. And if editing was something that I enjoyed or took pride in, I'd put a side-by-side up here right now, but I'm not going to do that. So when you get to the web page, there's not a whole lot you can do. You can check out the landing page, and I believe you can look at the projects. Yeah. And I have sort of like a breakdown of what is ProjectNext.App. And it's got some ideas of what I think this platform can be and how it works. Then we have a little bit of logic behind this presentation date right here, so it changes based on the week. I actually learned a few cool new features that I didn't know about in the process of building this app. So I have some FAQs here. All in all, it's too much text, and I need to go through it and find out what do I actually need and what is overkill. I need to make it more digestible at a quick glance. This is actually a real project from a real person. This is a long-term project that I'm working on. Anything that says Jin Yang is a placeholder. And even this one, which is my GitHub handle here. So let's go ahead and log in, and then we'll take a look at ProjectNext.App, which is the first project being hosted here on this website. So I will, and I think I just noticed something actually. It says December 3rd, but it was December 4th that I hosted. These actually all say December 3rd. What is going on there? Not all of them, but yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that. Something is not working as expected. So log in with GitHub, and I completely forgot to fix that. I'm gonna actually pause this and fix it real quick. This is how I didn't catch it. If we look over on this screen, you see it looks like this. And now if we look at the other screen, okay, well, this is just bizarre. I'm looking at it with my own two eyes right now on my second monitor, and it does not look at all like what it looks like in this video right now. This is a screenshot of the color issue that I was discussing before. This is my laptop right here, and you can clearly see that gray box around the sign in with GitHub area. Now, if we move it to the other monitor, it's just gone. It's gone. If I put it in the middle, you can see it on the left side and not on the right side. It's there, it's gone. It's there, it's gone. And this is significant. That's not like, it's not so close. I actually think that the background is completely black, and then this gray is hex code 333. Or maybe 999, I forget which one of them is darker, but it's not insignificant by any means. This color and this color look identical. I can't tell the difference. There's no discernible difference between these two colors on my second monitor. Alright, it's that simple. I think this looks marginally better. So we're going to go ahead and log in with GitHub. Alright, we're logged in. So nothing changes on the home screen. I am probably going to make those line up. I didn't catch that before. We have a carousel here in the middle. I'm using the Vuetify library, which is the material design library for Vue.js. It doesn't show everything on this front page. It only shows the most recent projects. So if I go to all projects, this will show everything. And there's only one more, again, a placeholder project. So let's take a look at the actual project page. Having a big wall of text, it just doesn't look good. So when I was writing this, I was formatting it as I wrote it, but then when I saved it to the database, it lost all of the formatting because I didn't have any sort of markdown or anything like that for it to, compile to. So, and these aren't buttons. This is just a screenshot of the homepage, of the old homepage actually. So I'm probably going to replace this picture. And then we have the technologies. So it's Node.js, and then let's put a pin in no code API here for a minute. We got Firebase, Firestore. We have Firestore Storage, which sucks, and I think I'm gonna stay away from using it again at all costs. It's been a 2-day nightmare. Those today and yesterday, absolute nightmare working with Firebase Storage. It's probably not so bad now that I'm more familiar with it, but for something that should be extremely simple, I can't explain how frustrating it is. So if you want to access anything that is stored in your Google account, I don't mean a GCP account, but just like your Google account, an old picture that you hosted on Google Plus back in the day, something like that. You have a long URL. It's essentially a Google URL and then a UUID at the end of it, and maybe even some more stuff to obfuscate the URL. But ultimately, anyone with that URL can get access to it. So I found out that that's how Firebase Storage works. Now the problem with Firebase Storage is you can't just use the actual URL. So this image or this document is hosted at this location, and this is the URL for that location. It doesn't work that way. You need that, and then you also need the UUID after it, and then there's a few different ways to store it, and there's hashing involved and all sorts of crazy stuff. So it's so much more complicated than it needs to be. Even if you don't need any sort of level of security like that, if you're hosting completely open and available images, they still make it absurdly difficult. At least I think it's way more difficult than it needs to be. Firestore, which is the NoSQL database that Firebase uses. Firebase has two of them. They have Firestore and the real-time database. I used Firestore. In hindsight, I think I should have used the real-time database, but that's a different discussion for a different day. We've got Vue.js, which is, of course, the JavaScript framework. Vuetify, which is the material design framework. Vuex, which is state management, which before this project, I hated it. I could get by in it. It was like a really awful necessity. But now I'm comfortable and confident with it, and I actually understand how it works. And that's probably my favorite thing about having done this project is just the learning experience. I picked a few things that I wanted to learn, and I really learned them thoroughly working on this project. Of course, we have JavaScript, and now Airtable. Originally, Airtable had a much bigger role. Now the only thing that Airtable is actually doing, it's hosting these technologies. That's all that's happening here on Firebase. It's hosting these technologies. I'm not even using it for the weekly projects logic anymore, even though I put a lot of time and energy into building all this logic out originally. Now it's not doing this anymore. So, I wouldn't consider it time wasted. It was all time that I put into coming up with the concept and thinking about the architecture. So, I'm not going to actually be using this. I'm not going to use anything in Airtable except for this. But I'm pretty happy with this database of technologies here. There's a lot of technologies in here. I'm going to give people the option to add technologies if I missed anything, and I'm sure I did. I'm particularly interested to see which technologies I'm missing that people want listed. No Code API is just what it sounds like. Actually, it's not at all what it sounds like, because you still need to know how to code to use it. But I think that it's sort of riding on the no-code movement, where instead of actually going to the Airtable API, and it's not just Airtable, there's a few different things that no-code API integrates with. What it essentially does is it will generate an API call for you. So all you have to do is get the endpoint and then pass a couple of arguments into it, and it will do some of the more tedious stuff involved with getting the information. So if you're having a CORS issue, for example, no Code API can sort of act as a proxy for CORS, which is nice, and also it's just less it's less syntax to have to remember. So I could see it being useful. I actually think that it works really well with Airtable specifically. And Airtable was one of the first integrations that was up on that website. So I think that he probably put a lot of time and energy into building out the Airtable integration, which makes it a really good proxy for Airtable API calls. Ultimately, all of the information except for the programming languages is stored here in Cloud Firestore. So you can see it's a NoSQL database, and then we've got a user table here, and we have storage. We have a projects folder, and then these are just the images. So this is actually a placeholder image. I have it named here as banner placeholder, but it was uploaded again during testing. So if we take a look at the file location, you see that it actually has like it stores it in binary. So this URL looks weird, but if you type it into the address bar, it actually will pull the image up. But it won't do it. If I copy it and I paste it in here, it won't do it because of that issue that I mentioned, where it actually needs the access token. So it needs this at the end of it. So if I want to pull this up, we can actually see what it looks like. You have to go to this URL if you want to access it. And to actually upload an image and then have this URL returned to you, it sounds like it should be easy, but it's not. And what turned out to be the most frustrating part of it is that the documentation has changed a lot recently. So there's a lot of information and examples online that are using a deprecated version of the API that doesn't work anymore. And then there's some issues with how it works in terms of being asynchronous. And if your API call goes through too quickly, you're not going to get it. And there's just like a lot of complications. It was very frustrating. I'll actually probably run through the code at some point. Cloud Firestore, I'm already through 7.8% of my monthly reads. That's 3,900 plus database reads. And I only have like 8 documents in my database right now. So how on earth did that happen? What actually happens is that when you update something, and I did not realize this, got the shock of seeing that this number was so high before I got outside of the free tier, because I could see how this would be really bad for someone who doesn't know how it works. and this is kind of mind-blowing. Each field in here is a separate write. So adding a collection is a write, adding a document is a write, and then adding a field to the document, each field is one write. So if I update this, unless I have my code set up so that it only pays attention to which fields on here are actually modified and then updates those fields, I'm going to be updating 24 fields. I'm going to be updating 24 fields every time I want to update one of these technologies. So now I have to refactor some of my code now that I know that that's how it works. But if you use the real-time database, you don't have to worry about that so much because you don't pay for writes. You pay for bandwidth or something like that. But depending on your circumstances, sometimes one might be better than the other. I haven't actually used the real-time database yet, but when I ran into some issues building this project, a lot of the documentation and examples that I found were for the real-time database. And I think I would have saved a significant amount of time just because of the better documentation with the real-time database. And I also wouldn't be writing, I would probably still be writing thousands of, items to the database in testing because I didn't realize it at the time. However, I wouldn't have to worry about exceeding my quota of 50,000 writes per month if I don't have to worry about that being the billing method. I have it set up to log in with GitHub, and I think I'm going to just leave it there. I'm not going to set up the Google or the email authentication because I want for sort of a selling point of this app to be that it integrates with GitHub, and I want it to be able to build in some cool features that piggyback off of GitHub. So I don't think it's unreasonable for a development-based platform to work that way. We have an update log right here so that I'm going to make it, I think I'm going to try to gamify this. I'm going to make like a point system where you can get points for pushing an update. And I think that people will come to appreciate it once they have a whole bunch of projects created on here. It'll be really cool to have sort of like that historical update log and to be able to see the process of how the app grew and which technologies changed throughout the process. Maybe to be able to export it into like some sort of resume or something would be really cool. So I'm thinking about that right now. Now the README right here, this is being pulled right from GitHub. Now this is still just the basic README. This is what it generated when I built it with the Vue CLI. So really nothing interesting there. But what I will say is that this this Markdown renderer right here, I didn't do the easy thing and just install an npm package and set up some sort of Markdown reader. I actually built this out. So if you've ever used Vue, you'll recognize that there are things like vbind, vmodel. Right here we have vmarkdown. That's not part of Vue. So what I learned is that you can build custom directives. So I used Vuetify for my, to build a theme and for the material design components. And with Vuetify, all of the components are modeled like this: vcal, vrow, and this is kind of cool. This is pre. I think that it stands for pretty. I think that's the case because it actually takes code and makes it look nice. It'll take your JSON data and it will actually format it like JSON data so you can read it. That's something I learned during this project that was pretty cool. But anyways, vmarkdown, what is that? Take a look over here at this folder called Directives. We have Markdown.js. Now in here, we have this horrible, ugly regex right here. So what's happening is every time my API calls the GitHub API and pulls that README file, what it's doing is it's taking that README file and it's going through each one of these rules here to convert it to from the rule to a template. And the template's the second half of this. So it's taking the regex and it's converting it to HTML. But then I ran into an issue with how it was rendering code. So I found a sort of hacky way to do it. And then at the end, it's just outputting it as HTML. So then it renders on the page as HTML like this. So now that I got this working, what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to hide this one. I don't think I'm going to get rid of it yet. I still want to make sure that this is actually working as is, because that regex took me so long to do that admittedly I stopped testing it. I stopped, trying different things out because it was like close enough and I didn't want to waste a whole day working on it. Not to mention, I know some people really like it, but I hate regex. Once I learn it better, I think that it'll be more fun, but right now it's like the chore of all chores. Here we have a comment button. If you click it though, it says, "We know you're excited to comment, but we didn't finish that feature yet. Try Slack instead." So there's a Slack group. You get an invitation to the Slack group when you sign up, and I automated that on the back end, and it's kind of cool. But what I will say is that the Slack API is a nightmare to deal with. I can't believe how bad it is. That's not fair. It's not necessarily bad, but it's like you have to build an entire Slack app to integrate with it. And then some of the things that you would think would be really easy, like invite this email address to the Slack group. You just cannot do that with the API. At least not the API the way that it is, without building an app on top of it, on top of the Slack app platform. This is the number of stars that the project has on GitHub. So let's just go ahead and we'll edit this. So it opens up this form. All of this information will always be up to date, but this right here is from when you still had to copy and paste an image URL here. You don't have to do that anymore now that I actually linked it with Firebase Storage. So let's just go ahead and see if there's anything here that needs updating. And I'm sure there is, but I mean, this app is barely using no code API anymore. It's barely using Airtable. Let's just go ahead and get rid of no code API, because if I'm only using it for one API call, it's not even worth it. It's using Airtable for the programming languages still, so I'll leave that there. I'm not going to do this on video right now, but I really wish that I set this up to format nicer. So maybe I'll work on that a little bit later. So let's go ahead and submit that. Oh, okay, that's embarrassing. This project isn't yours to edit. Nice try. Oops. The good news is that I threw that in there as like a backup. So there's actually two layers of protection to prevent people from editing your projects. And that's like the third and final, like if someone were to somehow get past layer A and layer B, then there's this layer C there. And what it's essentially doing is it's checking if the project's creator ID matches the logged in user ID. And as you can see, when I'm on this page on my app, it says true because this user is true. I am the user, so that's why it's giving me access to the buttons to be able to edit the app. These wouldn't even show if that wasn't the case. So there must be something wrong with my logic then. Alright, I think I got that fixed. So let's just double check. And we'll get rid of no code API. Save it. Alright, cool. Very cool. And this project banner right here, where you actually select an image for your project, this is that nightmarish part that I've been dealing with for the last 2 days, and I hope I don't have to use Firebase Storage again for a long time, but at least it's working. Now we also have the Hacker tab right here. So this is all real. I mean, Jin Yang's not real, but this is GitHub information here. This is GitHub followers and then public repos on GitHub, and then the two projects. So if we click on here, it'll bring us right back to this. If you go to a project that's marked as private, like this one is, it will let you know that it can't get the information from GitHub. So in turn, we don't have the README down here. We don't have any of the GitHub information. All we have is the information that I typed in when I put this in there. The last thing that I didn't mention is that we have a project URL link, which I should probably edit that so that it opens in a new tab. So I'm about to do that. But we also have a profile page. So since I'm logged in, clicking on this will bring me to my profile. And now that I'm editing it on my laptop screen instead of on my right screen where you can't tell the difference between colors apparently, I'm just now realizing that this needs to be fixed. So I'm going to get on that right now. But we have a link to your repos, your GitHub page, gists, and then blog. Now this is mine obviously so I can edit it, but the same goes for anybody else, so you can access this through the hackers page as well. Alright, so I think that looks better. And now the link for my blog, it goes to my website. And we'll make that target blank. So if we give that another go, it should open it in a new tab. I also just realized that you can access your profile, but nobody else can see your profile. So I'm editing the router right now to and creating a new component to allow for that to work. We're going to pass in the ID through the URL, and it's going to redirect to the hacker profile component, which is right here. We're going to allow for props to be passed in so that we could pass in the ID so that we can use the normal profile as a template just with a different ID. And then we're going to use the auth guard so that people can't look at profiles unless they're logged in. The reason that this is above the profile is because if you look at the path, if we had profile above this one, it would redirect to the profile. But because we have profile / and then a dynamic ID, if the URL has an ID in it, so if it has that / with something afterwards, then it knows to go to a user profile. Whereas if it doesn't, it knows to go to your profile because it will work its way down the list. Yeah, I think that's everything. So if you're interested in doing weekly hackathons, possibly even for a chance to win money, you might have something in the pipeline there. Definitely sign up. I'd love to get some more people on board here, and let's have fun and make some cool projects. It's the third week now, and the project's just about done. I actually think I'm going to finish it within the next, 2 hours maybe. Finish it is a relative term because things are never really done. But when I say finish it, I mean that I'm going to feel good about asking people to start signing up for the project. Now, this is what's really killing me right now. I'm creating a system so that you can follow projects. By following projects, it's going to add the project to this array right here in Firestore. The array is going to contain the ID for a project that you're following. Now, Firestore, for me, for some reason, is very unintuitive. I planned on using ViewFire for this project, and then I just didn't. And I don't know why I didn't do it, but by the time I realized that I was doing things the hard way, by the time it really clicked in, because I was just following the Vue documentation. I'm sorry, not the Vue documentation, the Firebase documentation. By the time I realized it, I already had stuff set up in Firebase and Firestore, and I didn't want to mix it half and half. I didn't want to rebuild the other stuff because I was sort of rushing to try to get everything done in a week. So here I am now where I'm realizing that I understand how Firestore works now, but I'm starting to dislike it more and more because it's just nowhere near as intuitive as SQL is for me, for example, or even MongoDB. MongoDB is a lot more intuitive for me than Firestore. Today is the last day of the third week that I've been working on this project. So this is what it looks like right now, and it's live on ProjectNext.App. We have the landing page, which I've got some more work that I want to do on the landing page. I've got some ideas for what to do here. We have featured projects here on a carousel. So if we go to see more, this will bring up all the projects. Now what I want to do that I haven't done here yet is that I want the new projects to be at the top. So when somebody starts a new project, I want it to go to the front of the list. So it's not complicated. It's more of, I just haven't implemented it yet, but it'll be quick and easy to do that. So I have the information page. I moved it to its own dedicated spot here because it was a lot of text to have on the front page. So now the stuff on the front page is more of a quick overview, not so much text. It does need, probably for the layout to be cleaned up a little bit. And then they could click here to go to the information page. It logged me in automatically. I have it set to check your cache and log you in so that you don't have to log in every time you go back to the website. Now, Firebase manages the cache, Firebase Authentication, so it's not indefinite, but it will let you log in quick and easy, until the token expires, however long that is. The authentication, of course, is with GitHub. That's still the same. Each person has a profile, but now instead of the profile page being unique, it'll bring them to the user ID area. So I have the projects and the profiles for the hackers set up the same way. And what I mean by that is, before, this was its own endpoint, its own URL that would bring you to your profile. If you wanted to see your profile or edit your profile, now the way I have it working is that it detects if you're looking at your own profile and it gives you extra features based on that. Same with the projects. If you look at any project, for example, I'll look at one that I don't own. If I look at this project right here, I don't own this, so I can't edit it. We can toggle the markdown here. I'll show you that with a project that has more on it. So I can't do anything with this project. I can follow it. It'll ask me if I want to follow. I'll click yes. So what happens now is if I go to hackers, I can scroll down to my name, or I could click right here, and this will bring, as long as I'm logged in, this will bring me to my profile, and you can see that I'm following the projects here. And as a matter of fact, it didn't pop up here. I'm gonna have to double check why that is. I'm glad I tested that in there. Yeah, I'm still following it. So I need to look into that. I think I know what the problem is. I think I did a one-time database read instead of subscribing to that snapshot. So that should be a pretty quick and easy fix. Anyways, if I go back to my profile page, I can click on any of the projects that I created, and anything that I'm working on, or any of the projects that I'm following. And this will be fixed in the next few minutes because I'm missing one here. All of this information is pulled from GitHub when you first create your account. Today I'm going to implement the editing so you can edit it, which there's going to be some extra things that I'm going to put together on each person's profile. I want people to be able to find other people based on their interests with programming languages or technologies, or what they know, what they want to learn, things like that. Now the hacker screen, again, same thing. If you click on a link, it'll bring you to the person's profile. You can see what projects they're working on and what projects they're following. That's the gist of it right now. Everything is, for the most part, functional. What I'm going to work on today is I've cleaned this up. So if I own the project, I'll go to this, for example, ProjectNext.App. There's a few things that I did. I put in an edit feature. Instead of putting in a URL like it had before, you actually select an image from your computer like that, and it will store it with Firebase Storage. We can toggle the markdown to see what it looks like. I need to add the comment functionality today, which should be hopefully quick and easy. And then we can push updates. So I'll close this and we'll say report an update. So I'll say pushed version 1 to Firebase hosting. You can check this box if this was a goal on your project, so you sort of self-report it at the moment. There might be a better system for this, but this is how it is at the moment. So the goals are sort of informal. But if you want it to show this update right here, I happen to achieve a goal, it'll put a little check mark there. Yeah, so that's the update functionality. Very quick, simple, and easy. If I go to create a new project now, one of the things that I don't like is with anticipated technologies, let's say I'm typing things in like, okay, Firebase and Firestore. Now, Fire, that's not something. So I tried to implement a system to delete that, and it worked, but it was so verbose that I felt like it was doing a disservice to the front end. Because what it was doing was for any possible thing that you typed in here, it was searching this long list of technologies and languages to see if it was in the list, and if it wasn't there, it was removing it. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to allow people to pick something or type something in with autocomplete and then have it push the value to an array that will then display in this field right here. So we'll see how that works out, but I think it's going to be a lot better, a lot easier to use. And then same with goals. I think that people can type in one goal at a time, press a button, and then it'll push it up to an array of goals so that you can sort of manage your project on a more like a more direct goal-based sort of level like that. The comment feature. So all of that will be done, I believe, by the end of the day today, and probably a few other things too, but I have a little bit of debugging to do now. Today is Saturday of the third week, and I was coming in today because I'm really thrilled with how this is turning out, and I feel like it's ready to start advertising. For the most part, I haven't yet finished the ability to edit your profile. So that's what I was going to work on today. And I thought, you know what, I can sit down, within an hour I'll have this working. I got very sidetracked, and let me show you what happened, because this is really, really cool. If we go to this, for example, this is where you submit an app that you're working on. We have the anticipated technologies, and you can select them. You can see that this bar right here keeps getting smaller as you scroll because there's a lot of technologies here. You can start typing it in. So if I type in Fire, as in Firebase or Firestore, I can go ahead and select these. But now my text is still there. And unfortunately, since I'm using Vuetify, I haven't found a good way to clear that out when you select something. There might be a way to do it. I haven't dug too deep into it, but nothing intuitive at least. Now, this is what's really cool. I ran into the same issue while I was working on the profile page today, because I want people to be able to add technologies, but I didn't want to have that same issue. So I thought, why not kill two birds with one stone, and I'll build a new system that I can then implement in the other spot too. So I'm going to show you what this does, and then I'm going to show you how I built it, because I think that this is, I don't know, this is one of those times where I feel like if you know a framework well enough, or you understand JavaScript well enough, you can sort of figure anything out, even if it's sort of like a hacky type of way to do it. So I decided today I want to build my own system with like an autocomplete and the ability to select the options. So this is what it turned into. I've got some debug stuff up here, so don't mind this. It'll actually help to visualize what's happening. That same example with Firebase, let's see what happens there. If I start typing, it's going to autocomplete. It's got Firebase and Firestore, and it says press enter to add Firebase and Firestore. So if I press enter, it'll add both of them. So now let's try AWS. Okay, I can add AWS. So it says press enter to add AWS. Let's try something else. I'll just type in the letters TE. So now you have the ability to, if I were to press enter, this would add Flutter, Integromat, Kubernetes, and you see what the problem is here. So now you need a way to be able to select things manually. Actually, let's rewind a little bit here. This is where it first came to my attention. The first thing in the list is .NET. So when I was testing it, I realized if I wanted to just select .NET, that's going to be a problem, because you can't select .NET without .NET Core, ASP.NET, ASP.NET Core. So then I added the implementation to be able to click on something and add it that way. Then another issue came to mind. And just for the record, what it's doing behind the scenes, and I'll show you, but it's getting rid of any spaces, periods, it's normalizing it so that it can compare what you typed in versus, so if I put some spaces in here, it's going to stay the way it is. I can do that and it's not going to make a difference. But I was thinking about this. I'm trying to make it sort of keyboard friendly. I don't want people to have to click on it to make it work. So let's try that again. If we type in net for .NET, they can go ahead and press down, and then it's going to let them select what they want. You can press enter, and it will add it to the list. Isn't that so cool? So let's take a look at the code real quick, and we'll see how this is working. Man, it's I'm not gonna say it's not often that I code something that I'm proud of, but this is like, one of those things that really just boosts your self-esteem a little bit. The way that this is ultimately working, and we can go side by side here, this is what I'm going to send to update the database. Again, this is some more debugging stuff. So if I change my name, it'll update there. So this is sort of a statement where it just says, if it's blank, use the previous value. If there's something new there, put something new in there. Very simple, basic stuff. And then for this text select area, this is where it gets interesting. And so it's a form, and it has a submit function. There's actually nothing to submit at the moment. I haven't gotten that far. I have a persistent hint on here. So what it's going to say is, as long as there's a partial match string with a length of more than 0, it'll say press enter to add, and then it'll show a list of the technologies. Now, partial match string is a computed property. So I have partial matches, which is an array, and then partial match string, which just formats it a little bit nicer by using the JavaScript map functionality. In the partial match functionality, I'm taking the technologies and I'm filtering the technologies by checking if the technology that's selected, the field is called adding, by the way. So if what you're adding is blank, if it's a blank string, it'll return an empty array. So it doesn't show all of the technologies right from the beginning. Otherwise, it's going to compare the technology by getting rid of the period, the spaces, and normalizing it to lowercase, and then it's going to check if what you're adding, when it's normalized, is included in the technologies array. So that's how I did the autocomplete. And then the highlighting feature, so the ability to go up and down and highlight these, this is really interesting. These are called chips in Vuetify. What I did was I put some logic on the chip. I have 2 sets of chips, so right here. The logic is called outlined. So that's what it does, is instead of filling it in as a color, it gives you that color as an outline. So the logic is saying, does the current selected value match? So I don't want to go too far back in the logic, but essentially the match is from the partial matches array. So if the item from the partial matches array matches what's currently selected, then it's going to show, let me say that again. If the currently selected value matches an item in the array, or in this case doesn't match, it's going to return true, which is then going to provide outlined with true. If it does match, then it's not going to be outlined, in which case it's going to look filled in. I hope that made sense. There's a lot of like double negatives in there, but I think you'll understand what I'm trying to say there. So it's like a front end sort of optical illusion. So now I have to add a little bit more logic in so that this will change to, if you have one of these selected, it'll say press enter to add and then whatever the selected value is. So let's do that real quick, just so you can sort of see the process. That's the persistent hint right here. So the hint is going to say, I'll leave it the way it is, but then I'll take it a step further and say, if current selected, so if one of those values is selected, otherwise it's blank. So if current selected, then we will say press enter to add plus to concatenate current selected. Otherwise, it'll return what it did before. That should work. One more thing, let's look at this real quick. The way that it's showing you the technology that you have selected is we have a value here called selected index. So let's jump down to selected index. It starts off at -1, obviously, because JavaScript arrays start with an index of 0. So we're starting it with -1. So as soon as we have some values here, it's at -1. If I want it to go to 0, then it's going to select Bootstrap. And then at 1, it's going to select Gatsby. So for each time I press down, I want the selected index to increase by 1. So I'm testing for the key presses with this functionality here. This is essentially saying if one of the arrow keys is pressed, then test to see if it was the up key. If it was the up key, then and the value of the index is greater than or equal to 0, then subtract 1 from the selected index. If the key that's pressed is the down key, then check to see if the selected index is less than the partial match array length -1, again because of the index of 0. Then what we're going to do, if that's true, is we're going to increment the selected index by 1. So you can see the selected index right here. I'll show you that in a second. I'll finish explaining what this is. And then if you press enter, what's going to happen is it's going to take what's in here, and then it's going to test if the partial matches includes what you've typed in. So is what you've typed in an exact match? If not, nothing's going to happen. If it is a match, it's going to add it to what I call the bank, which is an array of technologies that you want to add. Now, the other thing that can happen is you can see there's a lot of conditional logic here. So we're also testing for, is there a value in here? And does the value match one of the items in the array? Because if the value does not match the array, then we need to check, is it a partial match? So there's a lot that happens behind the scenes there. All right, so let's see if that code works. So I typed in TS. It pulled up. I would actually love for that to pull up TypeScript, but that's going to be some additional behind the scenes stuff. So right now we have an index of -1, so nothing's selected. If I press down, now we have an index of 0 and Bootstrap is selected. Index of 1, Gatsby, Google Sheets. And there we go. It's saying the correct thing. Press enter to add Bootstrap. Press enter to add Gatsby. And then if I backspace. Okay, that's one more thing I need to do. I need to watch for a blank string in here. So this is how I'll go about that. This is called adding, because it's a technology that I want to add. So let's throw in a watcher. And we're going to watch adding. We can actually just watch it entirely, because this is more of like a binary type situation. Like, does it have a value or is it blank? So we'll watch adding, and we'll say if this dot adding equals blank string and this dot selected index is greater than -1, then we'll make the selected index -1. I think that will do it. Let's see. All right, let's try that again. Same example with TS. We'll go down to Gatsby. And no, we don't want Gatsby. Now I'll try it again. TS. There we go. Man, it's so cool when things just work first try, isn't it? Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with how this is working out. And you can click on it. Now you just have to add the logic so you can remove it if you add something that you didn't mean to. But again, if I want to add Firestore, boom, throw Firestore and Firebase in there together. The only thing I don't love is that now I could throw in a modifier here and essentially make it so that if you hold Control, it will add the first item in the array. But then I mean, that's a lot to try to explain in this little hint section here. So I guess pushing down to select, up or down, I don't see anything wrong with that. I could also make it loop as well. But I kind of like it the way it is because if you want to sort of unselect it, you can go up here and then you're back to, just whatever you want to do. Whereas if I loop it, I won't have that, you won't have that ability here. So that's where I'm at right now. And this kind of turned into like an all-day project, but this is a lot of fun to work on. This project as a whole has been really fun to work on in general, but these are the little things that get me sidetracked, and I really love working on these little projects. This is something else that's really cool. I think I should show you because you don't come across this a whole lot. At least this isn't something that I've seen a whole lot of, or haven't had a whole lot of reasons to use it. So this component right here, it's called Technology Selector. That's what I'm working on. That's the thing that I just showed you. And right now, it's actually nested inside of Hacker Profile. So you look at this and you see it's actually called Tech Select. So how is it called Tech Select when the component name is actually Technology Selector with a capital T? The way that works is if I go to my main.js folder, you can see I'm using Vue.component, and then I'm naming it TechSelect, and I'm using Technology Selector, which I'm importing right here. That makes it globally available. You can do the same thing with filters or directives, as you can see here. So you got filters, directives, and components, but that allows me to inject it into any point in the app that I want to. So today's Tuesday the 22nd, and I'm going on almost a month since I started this project. So the main page here has been updated a little bit to look a little bit nicer. I've got some placeholder stuff here for some articles that I'm going to write, some videos that I'm going to do, and then some additions for the technology library. So this is the newest addition. So there's 167 technologies in here right now, although more can be added. So if we look something up, like let's look up Firebase, for example. You start typing, we have the autocomplete there. And I couldn't decide if I wanted everything to show up. It's a long way to scroll if you do that. So instead, I decided I was going to have them pop up this way. I can't decide if I like it or not, but it works for now. And it shows the category. And then if someone wants to enter something that's not already here, so maybe they want to put in VS Code, for example, it'll give them the option to add VS Code. And then there's some, I guess you could say some guidelines here. So make sure that the capitalization's okay. Now, for example, this probably isn't the best way to do it because I want people to go with what it says on the official documentation or on Wikipedia, for example, to keep things uniform. So here, for example, it might be Visual Studio Code. So we can go ahead and edit that. And now we have to select what this is. So it's really not any of these. I guess you could say it's a development platform, although this is more along the lines of like, Firebase and Heroku, that type of stuff. So maybe I need some more categories. And then there's some boxes to check that you verified the spelling and punctuation. You verified that the technology doesn't already exist in this database, and that the technology is likely to be used by other hackers other than yourself, the person entering it. The reason for that is you don't want someone to put some obscure software on there, some sort of like NPM package, for example, that nobody's ever going to use again. I don't think that would. Maybe it would be a good use of resources, but I guess we'll figure that out as we go. So we can go ahead and submit that. And I actually just realized that now I need to accommodate this. I need to change what happens once it's edited, because now a page should pop up here. But because it didn't, let's go to something that does exist. So let's go to Moon.js. All right, and it's blank, so I need to figure out what's happening here. So I just pushed an update that should have fixed that problem. So let's give that another go. We'll go to Visual Studio Code, and we'll click Add Visual Studio Code, select Development Platform, check these boxes. Now if I submit this, there we go, it pops up right there. I should probably, at the very least, automatically scroll back up to the top so that if you're scrolled down a little bit, you see it pop up there. Now you can click on it, and just like any other technology, it's going to bring you to the page. They all look the same right now, so if I go back and I go to Moon.js, and right now there's nothing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a box here so that you can enter some information. Ideally, what I'm thinking is I'd really like for videos of tutorials and for people's recommendations and links to projects where it's been used to all pop up here. So I'll work on that over the coming days, and you can already see some of the ideas that I have for tutorials and articles and things like that. So those are in progress. Now, adding a new or starting a new project, there's a lot that's been updated here. So the editing thing, I think I already showed this. So that's working nicely. I implemented that same functionality in a few other places. And now the other big one is goals. So we've got this, a nice little interface. And I spelled implement wrong. Okay, well, it's okay I spelled it wrong because you can get rid of it just like that. So it's a lot better than what it was before. You can also notice that if you look at the projects. So we'll click on Explore Projects. Now you can see that the goals, they're showing up in lists like this, and if it's too long, it gets cut off. So I have 60 characters, and if it has 60 characters, it will replace it with the ellipses at the end. So I think it's looking reasonable at this point. So I think as far as updates go, this is going to be the last update that I'm going to provide. We're going to do an official launch in January. So for the time being, I'm going to work on editing this video. I'm going to put it up on the product page right here. So the last feature, which you're not going to be able to see in this video, but by the time you see this video, you're going to be able to come here and see, I would say probably right here, underneath the comments, but above the markdown. This should be where this video will be linked. So I'm sure there will be more to come, but this is going to be the last update for now. Yesterday was Christmas, so today's the 26th, and it's been 1 month since I started working on this. So I'm doing sort of the finishing touches today. The first thing that I worked on today was a bug that I realized yesterday. I was on the couch and I was trying to add a technology from my phone, and I realized that I couldn't add a goal because if you take a look at this, in order to add the goal, you need to press enter. I have it actually listening for the enter key, which you can't emulate on a mobile phone. I guess there are some ways to do it, but without actually modifying the keyboard, you can't do it. So just a real simple workaround. Okay, this is all spelled wrong anyways. I just added a check mark here so you can actually click on it. So that makes it accessible from a mobile phone. If you've made it this far through the video, besides the fact that you're completely out of your mind, I really appreciate that you took the time to watch the video, and I hope that you got something out of it. Make sure that you sign up for ProjectNext.App. The web address, the URL, is ProjectNext.App. I'll put it up on the screen right now. It'll also be in the description. We're going to actually launch formally mid-January. So feel free to join now, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make this as good an environment as possible for not only experienced developers to learn new technologies, but for beginner developers to also learn how to code. So anybody who wants to brush up on their skills, be involved with hackathons at any level of skill, regardless of where you feel comfortable, we're going to try to make it so there are hackathons that you feel comfortable with. If you just want to improve your skill as a developer and find a cool community of developers in the process, definitely sign up. I think that this could be a lot of fun. I think it can be a really good place to grow as a developer. I hope you enjoyed the video.